Jason Statham has built a reputation as one of Hollywood's toughest action stars, a man who seems unshakable no matter what danger unfolds on screen. But the shocking truth behind today's headline is that even the strongest men can be hit with news that cuts deeper than any stunt gone wrong. And for Jason, this revelation didn't just shake his world. It shattered the foundation he's relied on for decades. Because what happened didn't come from a movie script. It came from real life. And it came without warning. It all began with a single phone call. One that stopped Jason mid-training, leaving him frozen in the middle of the gym where he spent years sculpting the action hero image fans adore. Witnesses say the usually composed star went pale, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Whatever he heard in that moment changed everything. For a man whose career has been defined by total control, precision, and fearlessness, this was the first time anyone had seen Jason truly shaken. Behind the sunglasses, behind the cool British swagger, behind the heroic persona, there has always been a fiercely private man who protects the few people he loves most. And the news he received that day? It struck at the heart of that small, inner circle. Sources close to the actor described it as devastating, something he never saw coming, and something that left him questioning decisions he thought were carved in stone. The story that leaked afterward revealed just how deeply the shock ran. Jason had been preparing for one of the biggest projects of his career, another high-stakes action franchise that promised to push his limits even further. But in a matter of minutes, all those plans were thrown into chaos. Calls were canceled, meetings postponed, production teams left waiting for answers, because Jason could no longer focus on the career that had once consumed him. His mind was somewhere else entirely, stuck on the painful truth he'd just learned. Friends say he refused to sit down, pacing the room for hours as if movement could somehow outrun the shock. Those nearest to him tried to offer support, but Jason, the man who has stared down villains, explosions, and impossible odds, suddenly had no words. And the silence that followed was heavier than any cinematic moment he's ever delivered. For fans who imagine their favorite action star as invincible, this was a wake-up call. Underneath the muscle and the fearless stunts is a human being who can be hurt just like anyone else. And the news he received didn't bruise his body. It bruised something far more fragile. What exactly was revealed that day? And why did it hit Jason so deeply? That unraveling begins in the next chapter of this story. For years, Jason Statham has been the definition of unstoppable. While other actors took breaks, slowed down, or disappeared from the spotlight, Jason worked like a machine. Film after film, stunt after stunt, pushing himself further every single year. But what fans didn't know is that behind the non-stop action, behind the flawless fight choreography and high-speed chases, a silent struggle had been building, slowly, quietly, and dangerously. And the heartbreaking news he received didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was the breaking point in a battle he'd been fighting privately for far too long. People on set had started to notice something was changing months earlier. Jason, who was known for his laser focus and sharp professionalism, began arriving distracted. His intensity was still there, but it wasn't the same. He would drift off during briefings. He'd stare at walls between takes, lost in thoughts no one could get him to share. Even the stunt team, some of the closest friends he has in the industry, said something felt off, like he was carrying a weight he refused to put down. And that's because he was. For the first time in his career, Jason wasn't just juggling movie schedules and physical training. He was juggling something far heavier, something deeply personal that he didn't want the world to see. The man who always insisted on doing his own stunts suddenly began hesitating. Not because he couldn't do them, but because his mind wasn't fully present. And anyone who knows the stunt world understands one brutal truth. The moment your focus slips, even for a second, the danger becomes real. Producers whispered concerns. Team members quietly discussed whether Jason needed time off. But every time someone approached him, he brushed them aside with a short, "I'm fine." He hid behind that phrase like armor, refusing to let anyone get close enough to notice the cracks forming beneath his tough exterior. But his closest confidants, those who have known him long before Hollywood, say the signs were unmistakable. They watched him withdraw from social gatherings, stop returning calls, and isolate himself in ways he never had before. The Jason they knew was warm, loyal, fiercely protective. But the Jason they saw now, he was distant, restless, and burdened by something he couldn't shake. And then came the heartbreaking news, the news that pushed this private struggle into a full emotional spiral. Suddenly it made sense to everyone who'd been worried about him. The tension in his voice, the long silences, the exhaustion he tried to hide. He had been bracing for something, maybe even fearing it, long before the world found out. Because behind the scenes, Jason wasn't battling a villain from a script. He was battling reality, one that threatened the very things he holds closest to his heart. And once the truth came out, it didn't just affect him. It spread far beyond him, shaking the people who rely on him most. When the news finally broke, it didn't just hit Jason Statham. It rippled through the people who have stood by him for years. The emotional shockwave reached his family, his closest friends, and even the tight inner circle that rarely allows outsiders in. And what made it even more painful was how unprepared they all were. Jason had done everything he could to shield them from what he was going through, keeping the warning signs hidden behind a wall of silence and forced strength. But heartbreak doesn't stay contained forever. Eventually, it spills over, and when it did, the damage was immediate. Those close to Jason say they had never seen him like this. The man who could stare down danger with unflinching confidence now struggled to make eye contact with the people who loved him. His partner noticed it first. The late-night pacing, the sleepless nights, the way he'd sit at the edge of the bed staring into the dark as if searching for answers he knew he wouldn't find. She tried to reach him, to understand what he was holding on to, but Jason kept insisting that everything was fine, until one day it wasn't. The moment she learned the truth, insiders say she broke down in tears, not just because of the news itself, but because of how long Jason had been suffering alone. The realization that he'd been carrying so much pain without letting her in created a painful distance between them. She felt helpless. He felt guilty. And suddenly, the strong partnership they had built, grounded in trust and loyalty, felt shaken in a way neither expected. His friends, many of whom have known him for decades, reacted with a mix of shock and concern. Jason had always been the reliable one, the protector, the fixer, the guy who stepped in when others needed support. To see him vulnerable, to see him wounded, was something they weren't prepared for. They tried to pull him back, to surround him with strength, but Jason withdrew even further. Not out of anger, but out of fear. He didn't want anyone to feel responsible for him. He didn't want to be a burden. But emotional walls don't protect relationships. They strain them. Projects he was involved in came to a sudden pause, not just because Jason needed time, but because the people closest to him insisted he take it. However, stepping away only made him feel worse. The guilt of letting down co-stars, directors, and teams weighed heavily on him. Jason has always built his reputation on dependability. Now, he felt like he was letting everyone down at once. The heartbreaking news didn't just interrupt his career. It disrupted the rhythm of his personal life. Conversations that were once effortless now felt fragile. Family gatherings became quieter. Even his closest friends spoke with caution, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Jason could feel the shift, and each strained moment reminded him of just how much his world had changed. Because when devastating news hits, it doesn't just affect one person. It affects an entire circle of hearts. And the truth behind Jason's silent descent was even darker than fans imagined. The truth behind Jason Statham's heartbreaking spiral is something fans never imagined. Because it wasn't the kind of problem money could fix, fame could shield, or strength could fight. It was personal, painful, and it forced Jason into a silent battle he never wanted the world to see. For a man who built his entire image on power and control, admitting vulnerability felt impossible. So instead, he hid it, he buried it, and he tried to outrun it. But reality has a way of catching up, even to the strongest among us. Sources close to Jason revealed that he had been dealing with a private family crisis, one that had been developing quietly behind the scenes for months. A loved one, someone he was deeply connected to, had been struggling with a serious and frightening health issue. Jason had been doing everything he could to stay strong, to support them, to be the rock everyone expected him to be. But the emotional toll was far heavier than he ever let on. He was flying back and forth between film sets and hospitals, juggling action scenes by day and terrifying updates by night. He'd wrap a high-octane fight sequence, wipe off the fake blood, and then rush to a private call with doctors. It was a double life filled with fear, hope, and exhaustion. And through it all, Jason refused to let anyone see the cracks forming. Those who worked with him say he pushed himself even harder during this time, almost as if he was punishing himself, trying to control the only things he could, because he couldn't control the one thing that mattered most. He trained longer, worked later, took on stunts that no one asked him to do. It was as though physical pain felt easier to face than emotional pain. But when the heartbreaking news arrived, the update he feared the most, it crushed him. Completely. The person he fought so hard to protect was now facing a life-changing, devastating turn. And for Jason, it felt like failure. Even though it wasn't. Even though he did everything any human possibly could. But guilt has a way of twisting even the strongest minds, and Jason began spiraling into a silent emotional breakdown. The people closest to him describe his current state as fragile. Something fans would never associate with the man who leaps off skyscrapers and defeats villains on screen. He's been avoiding public appearances, stepping back from projects, and spending most of his time away from cameras. Not because he wants privacy as a celebrity, but because he needs space as a human being. What makes this even more tragic is how unexpected it all was for the public. Jason Statham has always been the symbol of unbreakable masculinity. Fearless, unstoppable, indestructible. But even the toughest heroes have limits. And behind the fame, behind the action star glow, Jason was fighting a battle that no stunt team could help him through. His fans had no idea. His colleagues only saw glimpses. But this silent internal war was consuming him from the inside out. Right now, Jason Statham stands at a crossroads unlike anything he's ever faced in his decades-long career. This isn't the kind of obstacle he can punch through, outrun, or stunt his way past. This is real life. Messy, unpredictable, and painfully human. And the path forward is filled with more questions than answers. For the first time, Hollywood's most fearless action hero is navigating a future shaped not by scripts or directors, but by heartbreak. Insiders say Jason has stepped back from multiple major projects, some of them already deep in pre-production. Studios are quietly rearranging schedules, rewriting scenes, and holding their breath, unsure whether he'll return in the same capacity, or return at all. It's a rare moment in Hollywood. A man whose career has been defined by forward momentum is suddenly forced to stop, completely, and that pause has changed everything. His focus right now is entirely on his family. Those who have seen him recently describe a man determined to be present, to be supportive, to be strong for the people who depend on him. But they also describe a man who is still processing the weight of the news. Some days he seems calm, composed, almost like his old self. Other days, the exhaustion shows. The worry slips through. The toll becomes visible in the quiet moments when he thinks no one is watching. And yet, despite the uncertainty, there's something deeply admirable about the way Jason is handling this chapter. Rather than hiding behind fame, he's embraced the role that matters most. The role of a devoted family man. He's spending more time at home, limiting his travel, and shifting his priorities in ways that show just how deeply this news has reshaped his world. Friends say he's learning, slowly, painfully, that being vulnerable doesn't make him weak. It makes him human. Professionally, the future is unclear. Jason is still under contract for several upcoming films, including major action franchises fans have been waiting years for. But whether he'll move forward with them depends entirely on how things unfold behind closed doors. Hollywood can wait. Fans can wait. Right now, his heart is somewhere else. What's certain is this. When Jason Statham finally does return to the spotlight, he won't be the same man he was before. This experience, this heartbreak, has changed him. It has deepened him, grounding him in a way no role ever could. And while this chapter is filled with pain, it may ultimately carve out a path toward growth, healing, and a stronger future. But for now, the road ahead remains uncertain. He's taking things one day at a time, focusing on what truly matters, and hoping for the best while preparing for the challenges still to come. And fans around the world are holding their breath, waiting, watching, and standing by the man who has given them unforgettable moments on screen, now facing one of the hardest moments of his life. In the end, the heartbreaking news surrounding Jason Statham reminds us of something we often forget. Behind every action hero, behind every Hollywood icon, behind every jaw-dropping stunt that leaves audiences cheering, there is a human being with fears, vulnerabilities, and battles the public may never fully see. Jason Statham has captivated millions with his strength, his intensity, and his unbreakable on-screen persona. But this chapter of his life, marked by private pain, emotional uncertainty, and a devastating family crisis, shows a side of him the cameras were never meant to capture. This is not a movie plot. There are no retakes, no stunt doubles, no controlled explosions or choreographed fights. What Jason is facing is real, and it is a reminder that even the toughest heroes can be brought to their knees by life's unpredictable storms. What matters now is not the films he's signed on to do, not the characters waiting to be brought to life, and not the franchises that rely on his power. What matters is his heart, and the people connected to it. Jason's world changed with a single phone call, a moment that blindsided him and sent shockwaves through the small circle of people he loves most. His silent struggles finally surfaced, revealing a man stretched thin between the demands of fame and the emotional weight of a personal crisis he could no longer ignore. The inner battles he tried so hard to hide spilled over into every part of his life: relationships, commitments, his sense of control, and the identity he spent decades building. And as the news spread through Hollywood, friends and colleagues saw something they never expected. Jason Statham, the unshakable action star, fighting a battle he couldn't simply power through. Yet there is something profoundly inspiring in the way he has chosen to face this moment. He could have retreated completely. He could have buried himself in work, using the chaos of movie sets to drown out the emotional noise. But instead, he did the opposite. He stepped back. He allowed himself to feel. He put his family first. And he began the difficult, humbling process of acknowledging that strength isn't just about fighting through pain. It's also about understanding when to stop, breathe, and focus on what truly matters. Jason's future remains uncertain. The projects he paused may or may not resume when fans expect them to. Studios are watching closely, unsure how long this chapter will last. But what they've all come to understand is that Jason Statham is not just a Hollywood machine. He's not just a bankable action star or a rugged leading man. He is a father, a partner, a friend, and a human being standing face to face with a painful twist life threw at him without warning. And in that realization lies a powerful truth. Jason's story is far from over. If anything, this moment may be the turning point that shapes the next chapter of his life and career. Because heartbreak has a way of reshaping people, not just breaking them, but rebuilding them in stronger, wiser, more grounded forms. When Jason eventually returns to the big screen, and he won't just bring the fierce physical energy fans love. He will bring depth, heart, a rawness that only comes from facing real pain and surviving it. His silence during this time isn't weakness. It's reflection. His hesitation isn't fear. It's responsibility. And his temporary disappearance from the spotlight isn't retreat. It's recovery. Fans around the world have already begun sending messages of support, flooding social media with words of encouragement, love, and respect. Because even though they don't know every detail of his struggle, they understand the weight of heartbreak, and they recognize the courage it takes to step away from global fame to protect the people who matter most. At its core, Jason's story serves as a reminder to everyone watching. Heroes are not defined by their invincibility, but by their humanity. The characters he plays may leap through fire, topple villains, and walk away from explosions without a scratch. But real life doesn't follow that script. Real life demands resilience of a different kind. And Jason is showing that resilience now, in the quiet, in the shadows, without cameras rolling or crowds applauding. So what happens next? Only time will tell. His journey from this point forward may take unexpected turns. Some painful, some healing, some transformative. But one thing is clear, he is not facing it alone. He has the support of his family. He has the loyalty of his closest circle. And he has the unwavering admiration of millions of fans who grew up watching him defy the impossible on-screen and are now rooting for him just as fiercely off-screen. This chapter is filled with heartbreak, yes, but it is also filled with something else, something more powerful than any stunt he has ever performed. Hope. Hope that the loved one he's fighting for will find healing. Hope that the weight on his shoulders will lighten. Hope that the silence he's sitting in now will lead to strength. Hope that when he returns, he will rise, not as the unbreakable action star the world sees, but as a man who survived one of the hardest battles life can throw at someone. Jason Statham has faced villains, disasters, and impossible odds on camera. Now he is facing the one thing no hero can dodge, the fragility of real life. And as the story continues to unfold, one thing remains certain: Jason's fight isn't over. Not by a long shot. His journey forward will be unpredictable, emotional, human, and the world will be watching, supporting, and waiting to see the next chapter of the man they've admired for years. Because sometimes the greatest comeback doesn't happen in a movie. Sometimes it happens in real life.